Okay. Hello. Okay. Hello. Okay. I just checked that my audio works right, I guess. Anyway, let's go online and on full screen that. Okay. So, my original plan was to mess around on Unity today, but I'm not ready to do that. So, we're not going to. Um, Instead, so the goal was to be bodging together a game. The first step was going to be randomly generating a 3D maze and then filling it with monsters. So instead, we're going to do the design work to make that happen next stream. So effectively, this series of Sunday streams for a while, at least a couple of weeks, will be all centered around me bodging together a game. I'm going to try and have something built by the end of April that's like actually playable and works. We'll see if I decide to continue doing it after that. I don't know. I'm mostly just doing this for the joy of building more than the joy of actually making something. But okay, so what we're going to do now is start a new folder. Whoops, wrong thing. New folder. Bodged game. I have a lot of random stuff still on this drive. Huh. I used to use this drive for writing essays about interesting things. It's one of my many hobbies. I should put a list of hobbies in About Me, so that way anyone watching can look at what my hobbies are and decide what of those hobbies they would like to hear about. Okay, so let's. Now we'll just make a document, not a full folder for this. But okay, so we're making a document for general design. So we're just gonna do a whole bunch of design work. So the first thing is basic premise. So what I was thinking is I want to bodge together a game that's fundamentally similar to style-wise, or well, combat and exploration, similar to the way Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2 work, because I really like those games. So we're going to bodge together something that works like those. So what should I describe the basic premise as? Randomly generated. I don't know why I capitalized generated. Yeah, generated. Yes. My dungeons have genders now. There's 52 of them. Anyway, randomly generated dungeons filled with monsters. Player is exploring for loot, some kind of EXP, and possibly quests. We'll see if we get to the quests part. But the basic premise is in those two sentences. For any game that you're trying to bodge together, you should have that. And I forgot to change my category, didn't I? I should definitely go do that. Uno momento. That is definitely something I should have done before I started streaming. But I forgot. Stream information. Title. Designing a game to bodge together. Actually, I should call it bodged together game. And then category should be what? Is Unity a category? Doesn't look like it. What about development? What's the under development category? Let me actually go look on Twitch and see what that category is. Browse category, development. What is the under development category? That's an actual channel, not even a category. Whatever. You know what? I'll just make my own category then, since I can't seem to find one. I'll look more later, but game development is what I'm gonna call the category. There we go. And hey, it accepted that, even filled in some tags, although one of them is not correct. Whatever. Anyway, so update information. That's good enough for right now. It's close enough. Okay, so we have a game to bodge together. Let's get started then. Okay, so that's the basic premise. When in any game, even one that you're just kind of throwing together like this, where this is really informal, I'm not planning on selling this, and if I did plan on selling this, I would put a lot more effort into it than you will see on stream, unless I make this a really, really long series, because people are enjoying it. Why does it still say the title is Final Fantasy XIV Leveling Every Job? Did it just not properly update for me yet? Yeah, there we go. And it automatically bumped me to the category Science and Technology. That's fair. Yeah, whatever category it wants to put me in is fine. Like, I just gotta figure out what it is. Also, hello, my one viewer. It's nice to see you. The person who is always here for me. Go you. Assuming that you're the same person who's usually here. I don't know. All I know is that I usually have exactly one viewer for most of the time. So, if that's you, go you. If that's not you, well, I'm still glad you're here. Anyway, let's get back to work. Okay, so we have a game to design. So we have our basic premise. So now we have to design how we're gonna meet that premise. So some categories of things that we have to decide. Monster types, which we'll get into more later. Dungeon generation. So we have to decide how we're generating dungeons and things like that. Dungeon design. So this is the general dungeon design that'll be true of any dungeons. Which we'll probably only make one type of dungeon because, let's be honest, we'll be lucky if I make any art for this, much less enough art for us to have a second kind of dungeon. And that's not happening. Okay, so then, so I'm not going to bother having a dungeon type section because I can revisit that if I decide to have more than one type. I mean, I will have a section for it, but all it's going to say is only one type of above ground maze dungeon. Okay, so So player stats. So that'll determine how players get XP and stuff like that. Player loot. Or, well, actually, I'll put as player gear. And I'll divide that into consumables and permanence. So consumables would be things like if they can have thrown weapons, that would go under that. If they can have potions or items to heal themselves, that goes under consumables, all those kinds of things. It's a pretty straightforward word. Anything that you can consume. Anything that's consumed upon use. Anyway, so permanents are your usual equipment and stuff like that. There's a few permanent items, technically, that normally would be considered consumables if they ran out. Like, if they, for example, have an item that lets them escape the dungeon whenever. But, yeah. Which is why permanence gets also... Let me actually neaten this up a little bit. Do that. Yeah, I'm just going to make this whole document a little neater. Oops, I didn't actually need to do that. I just needed to do not that. Unfortunately, it didn't automatically figure out what I wanted it to do, which was that. I've in the chat. But anyway, here we go. So, consumables and then permanents get divided into usable and equipable. Usable, equipable, and passive. If I decide to have any passive items, I don't know. That sounds like something probably a little more out of scope than this'll be. You know what I mean? Like, that's a little bit out of scope. That's more effort than I'm likely to put into this. Okay, so I should further divide this into other headers that make sense. So dungeon, and then tab all of that in. Yeah, there we go. And then put a header of player right here. Okay, and then up here, put a header of monsters, and do that. Okay, monster types. We want to keep this really simple, and considering that we're not doing any art, or at least we're not planning to right now, I might come back to that later. But right now, we're not planning on doing any art, because I want to finish this and effectively... I'll do some stuff in the background in Unity, but I want to effectively finish most of this on stream. And since I only stream for 3 hours on Sundays and I want to get done in about a month, that means we've got about 12 to 15 hours to work with. So this is going to be pretty low on number of features. So monster types, we really only want to have... I just realized another selector that I need to have here. Combat. And actually, combat should go above. It should go above monsters, because it's going to inform what kind of monster types we want to have. So combat is, let's see, let's start with close range weaponry based around swords, daggers. That's the easiest way to kind of have basic combat. You know, we're keeping it really simple, really narrowing the scope of it, because otherwise I won't be able to finish what's in this design document in a month. Particularly if almost all of that time is happening on these Sunday streams. That's, you know, very limiting on the amount of time I'm actually spending on this. Okay, so close range weaponry only. Based around swords / daggers. Other than that, I mean, real-time combat, because we're looking for something more like Dark Cloud or Dark Cloud 2, where you kind of walk forward, you explore the dungeon, enemies see you, they come over and try and attack you, and you have a sword-like thing to fight them off with. So let's see. We're going to start with 2 types of attacks. Actually, let's go with 3 types of attacks. Charged attack based on equipped weapon type, which will probably only have 2 weapon types, light and heavy blades, just for simplicity. So 3 types of attacks. The charge attack, which is based on your equipped weapon type. Then you have the horizontal attack and vertical attack. So we're going for something a little more complicated than you see in Dark Cloud 1 and Dark Cloud 2. We're going for something a little more Zelda-like, where you have a horizontal slice and a vertical slice that are good for different things. We're only going horizontal and vertical, though no diagonal, because that would require more monster types for it to matter. And that's, again, you don't want to expand the scope too much. Here we're really just bodging together a very simple system. Okay, so for monster types, what we want is we want a couple. We want low to the ground cube, normal, which will be player-like in shape and function, and then flying. And to be but yeah, okay, so here's how this will work. Only hittable with vertical attacks / charged attacks. Only hittable with vertical attacks / charged attacks. Okay, and then normal enemies are hittable with all attacks. Really low to the ground cube and flying enemies are effectively, for simplicity's sake, only fly along at one height. For simplicity, flying enemies effectively are just going to be higher up low to the ground cubes. Just because, again, keeping scope small, so that way we can finish it on time. That's always the hardest part about any programming project, is you have all these cool ideas, you want to do so many things, but you have to keep the scope small, because you only have so much that you can do. So you've got to keep that scope small. You have to. If you don't keep the scope small, you're going to have some serious problems. So we keep that scope small, and we keep it ready for us to be able to add things later in development if we have the extra time. Okay, so dungeon design. Entrance, exit requires key. Entrance locks behind player. So effectively, if someone enters the dungeon, if someone enters the say the third floor in a dungeon, they cannot leave at the third floor unless they beat the floor and go on to the and get to the between floor staircase. Why exactly it works like that, you can change depending on the game. Right now, we're not worried about the world or the world building because we're not doing that. We might later, but right now we're not. Okay, so exit requires key. Then filled with monsters based on size. Actually, no, based on floor. So different floors will have different monsters. If you were building out a full game, you would have this be a lot more complex, and you'd have different kinds of, more than 3 kinds of monsters. In this case, it'll probably be more like the first floor is filled with all normal monsters, the second one starts to introduce a few flying monsters, and the third one is more about half and half, and that's probably about as far as we'll go. Maybe have a fourth floor. We'll see. So yeah, that's about all for the dungeon design. Oh, and exit requires key. Key dropped by random monster. That's an important note. A random monster is what drops the key. Okay, so monsters. So further under monsters, monster stats. Attack, so how much damage they're going to do if they hit you. Defense. See, unlike for a player where we worry about all of the different stats that a player can have, because we want them to be growing and everything, for monsters we don't have to do that. For monsters, we just have to care what are the good things that we can use a monster for. Like what stats does it absolutely need? It only needs the calculated stats. It doesn't really need the base stats unless you're going to later have monsters be something that players can become or things like that. Or if you're going to have them be able to recruit monsters. Since we're keeping the focus of this really small, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do any of that. So we don't have to worry about it. So attack, defense, and health. And that's all a monster needs. Oh, actually it also needs a level. The level will be for determining how much experience it gives to different things of the player. But we'll worry about that later. Oh, and a amount of money. You know, the money will be at least. Let me go back up here. Partially random. So each type of monster will have a money range associated with it, possibly in addition to a level range. In fact, all of these stats will probably scale with level. They'll probably all have some kind of formula that randomizes their numbers a little bit, but keeps them within a certain values for the level of the enemy. In fact, I should put that somewhere in here. All stats generated within a range based upon level. And I will put this right here. And then I can remove this note because it's included in the other. And that means I should move level to the top. There we go. Okay. So that is all I believe that monsters need to have. monsters will effectively, monster weapons. Randomly assigned weapon appropriate for their level. So effectively, they'll be assigned a random weapon that's around their level. So, yeah. Okay, so that's a lot, but that's still fairly basic. Okay, now let's look at dungeon generation. So right now we'll just leave this as randomly generated, and when we go and design the random generation algorithm, we'll come back and add more nodes here. But I'm not gonna design it right now, because designing player stuff is more interesting. Okay, so player stats. Since we're only using physical weapons and we're not including any magic right now, then we only need to include stats related to physical weapons. So we'll have health, we'll have some kind of stamina, let's see, so we have health, stamina, then, let's think about this. So if we have health and stamina, then the other things that we should have, if stamina is what's used when you attack and things like that, and we don't include magic, then the only other things we need to include are strength, which will be strength and not sure whether to call it dexterity or speed. We'll go with dexterity right now, but it's interchangeable in this case. So strength, dexterity, and let's see. So health, stamina, strength, and dexterity I think are about all we need for a purely physical game like this. Oh, we'll also have a speed stat. And yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, so let's have another section called player skills. So instead of having players be able to level up, we're going to have them be able to train skills. So they won't have any levels, but their skills will increase their stats. Defense will be a skill, and increases health and defense. And I forgot to include some other stats up here because we do need defense up here. So defense increases health and defense. That is the entire effect of that skill. Like, experience goes up when hit. Okay. Weapon. So we're gonna have two types of weapons: sword skills and dagger. So I'll call it sword mastery and dagger mastery. And what sword mastery will be is increases strength, majorly increases dexterity minorly. Experience goes up when, whoops, I can type. So experience goes up when hitting enemies or when attacking with a sword, based on highest level enemy hit. So effectively, we should have another section here. In fact, we might just want to make skills its own section instead of being under players. But anyway, so general properties. All skills get different levels of experience based on either the situation or the level of enemies that are being interacted with. And if enemies are too low level, there will be no increment in experience. There'll be no change. It effectively comes down to if you're too low level, there just won't be any. Like say your sword mastery is up to level 4 and you're hitting a level 1 enemy, it's not going to get any experience for that. Your sword mastery is too high. Okay, so then dagger mastery increases dexterity majorly, increases strength minorly, and experience goes up when attacking with a dagger based on highest level enemy hit. Okay. So let's have a separate section for derived stats. These are things that so HP derived from health. Then attack derived from strength and dexterity. We can figure out the exact formula later. Armor derived from defense. Then movement speed derived from speed. Attack speed derived from dexterity, speed, and strength. And that's in order of how much they affect it. So dexterity affects attack speed the most, speed affects it moderately, and then strength will have just a little boost in attack speed. The same way that dexterity contributes a little bit to your physical attack. Okay, so let's look at other skills that we can make here. Let's have some kind of basic crafting. It's literally just going to be if you have the materials and your crafting level is high enough, you make the item kind of thing. Because we're, again, keeping scope small, we don't have enough scope to spend to make it more complex. Okay, so I forgot to tweet out that I was streaming again. Whoops. Oh well, I don't have many. I only have like 2 followers right now anyway, and they both know I'm doing it, so I'm just not gonna worry about it. Anyway, so I'm crafting. I'm a crafty boy. Okay, so crafting requires recipe and crafting level. Increases, okay, so we're gonna have 2 types of crafting. So we'll have a crafting section outside of this, actually. crafting, which we'll fill in a bit. Right now, player gear. Or not player gear, this. So, blacksmithing, which will be all of our, so we're going to have blacksmithing increases strength majorly, increases dexterity minorly. If you're wondering why I'm making other things like this, it's so that way players have more than one option to increase stats. Like, you shouldn't have to use a sword in order to have strength, because after a certain point, you're going to need strength, right? Because dexterity is not giving you a whole lot of attack. And the same is true of dexterity. Okay, so blacksmithing, leatherworking, the two of those combined will handle all of our armor needs. And leatherworking increases dexterity majorly and increases strength minorly and increases speed minorly. Okay, sprinting lowers stamina cost of skill. Increases speed majorly, increases dexterity minorly. Okay, there we go. Then the last skill, oh, there was one more kind of crafting. What should I call this? You know what? We'll take the easy route and just call it alchemy for right now. But it's effectively just potion creation for right now, because all we'll have really is health potions and some other small items. Like, we're not going to have a lot here. Okay, so alchemy, which just increases dexterity majorly and increases speed minorly. Okay, so we have a fair amount of skills there. Then we just need 2 remaining skills that... actually, no, we'll just fold those into Sword Mastery and Dagger Mastery. Increases damage of charge attack. Increases, or decreases charge time of charge attack. Okay, there we go. Now, that's all that's there. Okay, so let's work on player gear. So types. Actually, you know what? We'll just do it like this: swords, daggers, helmets, body, hands, and hands, legs, accessories. So we got some basic kinds of things here. For accessories, all we're gonna have is rings, just for ease. So all we have is rings, and for rings we're going to have the Ring of Strength, increases strength by 1 per ring level, which we'll just have a bunch of rings of strength of different levels. Probably either drops from enemies or crafting. So Ring of Dexterity increases dexterity by 1 per ring level. Okay, there we go. Okay. That's accessories handled. So let's have some swords handled. So we're going to have two kinds of swords. Short swords, stronger attack, shorter reach. Actually, stronger, faster attack, shorter reach. No, I like my other one better. Stronger attack, shorter reach. Okay. Then long swords, weaker attack, longer reach. So that's just the general idea of what are these items doing. We'll get into the actual numbers after a while. Okay, so daggers. Let's see. What should I do with daggers? I'm really thinking that for right now we'll just have one type of dagger, because it's, you know, I don't know how to make multiple kinds of daggers for one. That's definitely a consideration. You know what, we'll say it can be dual wielded as the, apparently there's a space in dual wielded. Huh. Who knew? Which brings us to the next thing, shields. Forgot to add them. We should have those. Can be used to block. Okay, there we go. That's shields handled. Okay, now helmets. Increase defense and health. So effectively, each of the increase health and strength. Each of the sets here is going to have a stat that it prioritizes increasing, effectively. Increase. I put health and strength on those. That's not what I meant. I meant defense on all of them. Defense and speed. I wanted that to be defense, not health. So let me fix that. There we go. Okay, now that I fixed that typo. Okay, so we have to increase defense and speed. So let's increase defense and speed. It'll be great. We will be running super fast. Okay, so types of consumables. Increased stamina recovery. The same kind of thing that you can use in like Dark Souls, for instance, to increase your stamina recovery. Health potions. And let's see. Increased movement speed. One of my favorite items in Dark Cloud 1 was Dran's Feather, which when you get it, it's effectively an item that just lets you move super fast until it eventually breaks, and I really liked it. So we're gonna go with that. Okay, so in this should be a note, probably at the top is the best place to put it. Consumables bar at the top with assigned button for using consumables. Yeah, that's what we're looking at for that. So effectively, you have you'll have a little bar at the top with some amount of items that you can select from. Since we only have 3 kinds of items, what it'll probably be is you know, you have those 3 items. Okay, so that's that. Now, permanence. I just put all those up there, didn't I? Totally did. Yep. Are there any other permanent usables? Let's see. Escape rope. Nah, I don't want to give that out. Or more accurately, I don't want to have to build it. So I think that's all of the permanents, so it doesn't need its own section, because it's just gear and consumables. We're not going to have any permanent items that you can use. Yeah, okay, and we're not going to have any stat increasing items at this stage, at least not consumables that increase stats. So let's write out our basic crafting stuff. Okay, so crafting materials dropped by monsters or found in chests. So, which apparently they're chests. Chests randomly generated on each floor. Okay, so to make a higher level item, you need a lower level item. Example given, to make a level 2 sword, you need, or level 2 longsword, you need a level 1 longsword, and items to use to upgrade it. Okay, success guaranteed so long as you have a high enough level in the crafting setup and a high enough let's see, and the materials and the crafting type required and the materials. Okay, so there we go. Now that's all of that. Now let's start adding some numbers. Okay, so all stats start at 10 for right now. I mean, we might add the ability to choose your starting stats later, but for right now, health times 10 is what we'll go with. And actually, let's go with health times 5. Gives us a little more to do there. Strength times 1 plus dexterity times 0.25 and round down. Okay, then armor is just something that we're not going to worry about. We're just going to use defense. I was originally planning on having the armor items increase your armor instead of your defense directly, but since I just said for them to increase defense, we therefore don't need a separate armor category. Okay, so movement speed, in meters per second, and it will be, let's see, speed times also doubles movement speed while using. Okay, so back up here. Speed times what makes sense? So we're in meters per second, so if speed starts at 10, what's a good starting speed for your average human when they're walking and not running? So for your average healthy human who might be fighting monsters, let's see, average human walking speed meters per second. Glad other people have needed this. So your average is about 1.4 meters per second. So what we probably want is, since this should be a bit above average because this is someone who's, you know, feeling good enough about their physical abilities to go fight monsters, let's make this speed times 0.2. So effectively speed divided by 5, which puts your starting speed at 2 meters per second, which feels about right if you're looking at like what's someone who's moving quickly look like, because you know, what does a light jog look like for a healthy person? It's probably in that vicinity, or at least close enough that we're calling it good. Okay, so attack speed. So measured in attacks per second, and you get 1. So strength times 0.1 plus dexterity times 0.4 plus speed times 0.2. And that comes out to what? 2 plus 4 is 6, 7, so 0.7 attacks per second, which if you think about it, so that's the base attack speed. Then multiply times 2 for daggers. So your basic longsword will get 0.7 attacks in a second at the start, which, when you think about it, makes sense. Then a dagger will get a faster attack. Okay, yeah, that makes rough sense. Yeah, we'll see how that actually looks when we build the system. But okay, so that's all derived stats. They now have numbers attached to them, so let's look. It increases health and defense by 1 per level. And then increases strength by 3 per level, and increases dexterity by 1 per level. Increases damage or charge attack by 10%. That's not a percent sign, there's the percent sign, per level. Okay, so Dagger Mastery increases dexterity by 3 per level, increases strength by 1 per level, and decreases charge time of charge attack by 10% per, or actually by 0.1 per level. Okay, then blacksmithing increases strength by 3 per level, and dexterity increases dexterity by 1 per level. Increases dexterity by 3 per level, increases strength by 1 per level, and increases speed by 1 per level. Alchemy increases dexterity by 3 per level, and increases speed by 1 per level. Okay. By 10% per level. And increases speed by 3 per level. And increases dexterity by 1 per level. Okay. Okay. So if we don't have any other special effects on these, it's in health by 2 per level, increases defense and strength by 2 per level, increases defense and dexterity by 2 per level, and increases defense and speed by 2 per level. Okay. In addition to rings of dexterity, you can also have a ring of health. Increases health by 1 per ring level. Ring of speed increases health by 1 per ring level. Ring of what am I looking for here? Ring of, I have strength, dexterity, health, speed. Ring of stamina increases stamina by 1 per level. Right. Sprinting should be increasing stamina. Increases stamina by 1 per level. And blacksmithing should also be increasing. Increases blacksmithing, or yeah, blacksmithing increases blacksmithing by 1 per level. That's either a really obvious statement or a really broken feedback loop, depending on how exactly you mean that. Anyway, so your strength, dexterity, health, speed, stamina. Do I have any other stats, or is that all of them? Defense. Nah, there's enough things that increase defense. Don't need rings, too. Okay, so the reason I changed everything to per level like that is because now, and because everything just is effectively just an upgrade of a lower level item, we don't actually have to set a maximum level. We just make everything into 32-bit integers, and we assume that no one is ever going to be playing this long enough to do that. Yeah. So that's that. Other than that, I will be back in just a moment. I require the restroom. So be right back. I have returned. Okay. Let's get back to work. The stream might end early today because I'm not sure I have 3 hours of design work to do here. And since I didn't manage to make time to set up Unity, I don't have any way to work on this, right? I'd rather not stream me setting up Unity. That's a bit, okay, let's do this. Let's make a Google Sheet for crafting. And required materials. Okay, so longswords require, we'll say iron times 2. Times 2 times level. So that's what the recipe requires. It requires that you spend iron times 2 times the level. Okay, so let's see. Daggers, and actually no. Longswords need to take iron times 3 times the level. Short swords need to take iron times 2 times the level. Okay, there we go. Now, daggers take iron times 1 times the level. Okay, so that's what they cost. In terms of materials, now helmets, we're going to go with bronze, so that way our offense... Well, should we separate the materials for offense and defense? It's a hard decision. And actually, let's, instead of it requiring iron, since effectively we want... let's say we want this to be an increase of how magical they are. So we'll say of how enchanted they are. So we'll say magic powder. And then everything will take magic powder to upgrade based on its size. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And helmets are also pretty small, so magic powder times 1 times level. Let's lengthen that out. Okay, and actually, let's do this. Strength powder. Strength powder. Dexterity powder. And then a helmet requires health powder. Body armor requires strength powder times 3 times level. And then hands requires, that's what I called it, right? Hands. Let me just make sure that that is in fact what I called it. Oh hey, I have a second viewer. Welcome. Feel free to, comment on what I'm doing if you would like. I'm just working on the design of some bodged together games. I accidentally clicked someone in the chat. So if you're wondering what that was me clicking them in the chat and it then opening their page. Anyway, I do that with a lot of people. I just didn't expect it to open in the tab that I was sharing. So I do that with people in the chat because there's sometimes bots in it, and that's a way for me to see if someone's a bot. Because if they're currently live streaming, but it says they're in my chat, they're not actually in my chat, and that's a bot. But anyway, so what I'm doing is, because I don't have Unity set up for me to actually start making the game yet, I'm doing all the design work. So right now I'm building out the crafting recipes for the game. So the basic premise of the game is to explore randomly generated dungeons filled with monsters for loot, XP, and possibly quests. And then the rest of this is all just, I spent the last hour designing various things. But okay, so I made the equipment, yeah, I called them hands and leg pieces. So we're keeping the scope of this very small because I'm hoping to finish it by by April, like the end of April. So this will be what I stream on Sundays for the next several Sundays. Today we're just doing design. Next week I'll have Unity set up and we will start building out what this actually looks like in Unity. So we'll build something that randomly generates the dungeon, and with this randomly generated dungeon we will explore it effectively as our character, and that's the basic premise. So we'll make the maze and some basic enemies next week. This week we are purely on design work. Okay, so hands, increase dexterity, so dexterity powder times 2 times level. Then the way I'm having crafting work is that because it requires less design work on my part, it's a very simple, if you make a higher level item, it will give you more stats, and that's it. So we're just building out that very simple way of strengthening, rather than any complicated items, because you can't have too big of scope, because I effectively want to finish this in about 20 hours of work, and that means you have to have very limited scope. In fact, if we didn't have Unity to do a lot of the stuff in the background for us, even this scope straight up just wouldn't actually be feasible. So yeah. Anyway, so hands, then legs, speed, powder, times 2 times level. So the way I'm having crafting work is you just need to have gotten the requisite amount of powders from either enemy drops, chests, or by buying it in town. And if you have the requisite number of powders and the recipe to make the next level, then you can do so. That's all it requires. Okay, so longsword, short sword, daggers, helmet, body, hands, legs. I don't think there's anything. So that's all the equipment. Then potions. Health, powder. Oh, whoops, I forgot rings. Strength ring. Strength, powder, times 1 times level. Then dexterity ring, dexterity powder, times 1 times level, stamina ring, stamina powder times 1 times level. Then so strength ring, dexterity ring, stamina ring, health ring. Actually, no. I said not to make a health ring. Oh, no, I did make a health ring. It was defense that I don't have a ring for. So health ring, health powder times 1 times level. Then what other, speed ring, speed powder times 1 times level. Okay. There's that. We are a little closer to done. I believe that's all the rings I made. Let me just double check. Strength, dexterity, health, speed, stamina. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, now I just need the 3 types of consumables. Health potion. Health powder times 1. Stamina potion. Stamina powder times 1 times level, and make this times 1 times level 2. Okay. And over here I should increased stamina recovery, stamina recovery times level. So whatever your base stamina recovery is times level, and I should actually specify that somewhere up here, that your base stamina recovery is 10% of stamina after not spending stamina for 0.5 seconds. So 10% of stamina per second after not spending stamina for 0.5 seconds. That's pretty close to what most games that I've seen that have stamina recovery. That's pretty close to what it is. I'll probably play with that number once I, have a stamina bar that I can watch fill up and figure out if that's fast enough or not. But yeah. Okay, so back to over here. So health potion, stamina potion. Actually, I should scroll down here. Actually, easier way. Health potion, and so restore 30% of health. There we go. Real simple potion, and then we don't need to have multiple levels of health potion. We can just have a single health potion that restores health. Okay, so that's how the health potions are going to work. And we're going to remove the increased movement speed item because we added a sprint skill instead. Don't need to be able to increase movement speed if you have the ability to just sprint instead as a skill. Yeah. That's good for that. Did my explanation of what I'm doing make sense at all? Or are you still pretty confused about what's going on here? While I wait for you to answer, I will continue looking at the other things that I have to do. Okay, so that handles crafting. Um, it'll probably make more sense next week as I start building out the actual visual game that you can see. That'll probably be when it makes more sense to most people. Because this is all very abstract, and if you play a lot of games, this will kind of make sense, particularly if you play a lot of the kinds of games that this is based off of. But, like, it's hard to translate this into a game conceptually. Okay, so let's look at these. So plus 2 attack per level, and then plus 1 attack per level, plus 2 or plus 1 attack per level, and I should actually make it this. There we go. Okay. Then oh, I forgot to include shields in that. Actually, we'll just have 1 shield. No need to give that a level, right? It doesn't need one. Shields don't need levels. It's fine. Okay, so that's all of those. That's all the rules. I'm actually getting pretty close to the end of what I can do without actually building things in Unity. But let me see if I can find some more things to do. Okay, so let's figure out how... so where's my combat section? Here we go. Okay, let's figure out damage. Normal attack. Actually, yeah, normal attack damage. Normal attack damage. Okay, so short sword. So let's figure out what our charged attacks are. So we have 3 kinds of attacks: your charged attack, your horizontal attack, and your vertical attack. Because that's about how many enemy types we're gonna have. So, you know, trying to make a little bit of differentiation on our hack and slash, because that's the kind of game this is. So the short sword charge attack will be, let's see, a spin around the player. Yeah, let's make it ridiculous. Ending with the sword going flying in front. So, like, the player does a quick Zelda-esque spin slash, but instead of stopping at the end of that, they just kind of let go of their sword and it goes spinning in front of them, and then somehow comes back to their hand, but we're not going to worry about that. It's just going to reappear there. So they're going to have effectively a projectile. Okay, so longsword. Actually, I should make that the longsword special attack. Something similar to, so the basic concept of the randomly generated dungeons and exploring for loot and everything is going to be a lot like, well, a lot of hack and slashes, but particularly like Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2. which I'll eventually be playing on my YouTube channel at some point. As soon as games that I want to put on my YouTube channel stop coming out with such regularity. But right now, it'll be a bit before I play them. But yeah, so it's going to be that kind of game, except more focused on combat and less focused on all the story and other stuff that Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2 focus on. So we're adding some more combat details and having less types of enemies, because that would add a lot of development time if I had a whole bunch of types of enemies. Okay. Then short sword. Will be a yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll have short sword be a parry. And we'll have it be a little bit Dark Souls style, except it'll automate the follow-up. And it'll be negates enemy defense if successful. So you successfully parry, you get to hit them without them getting any defense whatsoever. Or possibly it'll negate a percentage of their defense if negating all of their defense turns out to be utterly busted. Jump upward and come down, stabbing in front of you with both daggers. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So there's our 3 types of charge attacks. And let's see. 2 times normal attack damage plus 0.1 times sword. You know what, I already have written elsewhere with that other formula, so I'll just leave it out for right now. Then short sword will be 1.5 times normal attack damage, and it negates enemy defense. And then this will be 3 times normal attack damage. There we go. Okay. That's all set up.